Hi, everyone. I'm Jeannie Breedy. Thank you for joining us today for this Liquitex class that Michaels is so kindly sponsoring. We're looking forward to having some creative artwork and checking it out from you this evening. Marla's going to be using Liquitex Basics acrylic paint. And we're going to work on a terrazzo pattern. And we're just going to go directly into it. There's going to be a lot of discussions. I'll be monitoring the chat. So looking forward to it at the end. As Hamina said, let's look at your art. All right, so let's let Marla begin.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us tonight. I'm really looking forward to painting with you. And yes, definitely if you have questions, ask away. We'll be happy to help in whatever way we can. And I think we'll have a fun time painting this piece together. As Jeannie said, we're going to be doing a terrazzo. I was kind of joking around thinking of it as faux razzo, because terrazzo is traditionally a flooring material. It's usually made in concrete with chips of marble or granite, and then it's polished smooth. And then it would be something that you'd walk on, right? And the English word for terrazzo is actually terrace. So we're taking something that's traditionally a flooring material and we're elevating it to your walls. We're making it more of an art piece. So, and you'll see it in lots of different formats these days. It's a really fun, decorative way to add some color and kind of some just, I don't know, just a pop of interest to your house. So I hope you'll enjoy doing this, and we'll go ahead and get started. So just a couple of things real quick. If you're someone like me who's into all things art materials related, I want to share some things that you might want to check out. So one site to follow would be at Liquitex Official. This is the brand of acrylics that we're using tonight. And it's fantastic for tons of Liquitex specific information on artists who use our materials, new product development, all sorts of cool things, sometimes even residency information. So I encourage you to take a follow there. This site stands for the Fine Art Collective North America. It's TFACNA. This is a site where I'm one of the contributing artists, and we will do IG Lives weekly. And we also do little mini demos on art materials, Liquitex and our sister brand, Winsor & Newton. And so it's everything from acrylic, watercolor, drawing media, all sorts of cool things there. So I encourage you to give that a little check out. And then this is me. I'm at Marla Morrison Art. I'd love to see what you're up to as well. So feel free to reach out to me there. Also, if you have questions about what we do today or any of my other demos, I'm happy to connect with you there. And then lastly, if at the end you'd like to share your work, please feel free to share it also with the hashtag Liquitex Official, but also make it with Michaels and Michael's classes, because what's really cool is oftentimes Michael's will select different works from the classes and share it on this hashtag. So it's always fun to see what you guys have done, and it's inspiring to other people who may have never taken a class like this before. So I encourage you to consider posting your work via those tags. All right, so this is a little sample of, or this is the painting that we're going to kind of use as our inspiration for the piece tonight. It's an 8x8 canvas. It's pre-primed, and hopefully you have something like that handy so you can paint along with me. We're using 5 different mixed colors, so we're going to spend some time talking about that. Those mixed colors come from 8 colors out of this cool Basics acrylic 24-piece set. I have had several of these 24-piece sets around just because the tiny tubes can be really handy when you need just a little bit of color, or maybe you need a large variety of color, and they're just handy to have around. And even though we're using 8 of them tonight, just know that if you have this set, you're going to have a lot of opportunities to use the other colors as well. All right, so I'll move these where they're in view a little bit more here if I can. And then obviously too, I have a little tearaway paper palette that makes it handy for mixing color, because we are going to do a decent amount of that tonight. Of course, don't feel like you have to do the exact colors I'm doing. I'm going to definitely talk you through how to do that if that's what you'd like to do. But if you're inspired by a different family of colors, I encourage you to go for that as well. These 5 are fun, kind of, I don't know, Jeannie, I don't know if you'd agree, but they're like kind of that mid-century modern fun pop of color that's really popular right now.
Yeah, that would be your spot on with that.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So we had a fun time picking this palette and thought the colors went well together. So we're also going to use the Liquitex Freestyle palette knife. This is the smallest knife, size 16. You can see it's well loved. I love this particular knife for mixing. I use it all the time. And we're also going to use this #2 flat Liquitex professional brush, synthetic filament. My brush head's gotten a little bit stained. More than likely yours will too if you have a new one. Don't let that disturb you. As long as you clean the paint out after you've gotten acrylic on it, it will stay working for you. It just might get a little stained depending on the colors that you use, okay? But this is the brush we're gonna use for this, and it is a flat edge. And of course I have paper towels. All right, so we'll put this to the side. I'll bring it back as a reference too. And then I might kind of zoom in just a little bit.
Marla, just one thing. Most of these canvases, someone asked about what tools you're using, and you just explained the palette knife for mixing and the brush for creating the artwork. But the canvases that we use are generally pre-primed with gesso. That's correct. That's correct. Because that's what typically, I don't even know the last time you had to work on a piece of canvas that wasn't gesso. It seems like it's pretty much the standard now, right?
Yeah, it's so convenient just to pick up a pre-primed canvas, and Michael's has a lot of selection on sizing. I'm a fan of these smaller squares, or like 9x12 is one will use a lot. But yeah, these are pre-primed. And if you're new to painting and you're curious about, you know, what that means, traditional canvas is what we call a canvas color, right? It's like a fabric. It's kind of like that off-white creamy color. You can tell these are pre-primed because they're white. Traditional gesso is white, and that lets you know, okay, there's at least one coat of gesso on here. Oh yeah, how do you know if it's pre-primed? That's how. Usually it's going to be white. Also too, on the packaging, it should tell you, you know, gesso primed. I tore the plastic off, but usually it'll say, you know, primed and ready for use, or ready for oil acrylic, that kind of thing. So it should tell you if it's been primed. But usually the tip off is that it's white, because canvas or linen is a natural kind of off-white color. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So I also have some water because we're going to be cleaning our brush in between. So be aware of that. I thought it would be good to show kind of my cheat sheet here. Sometimes if you're working on a project and you want to match colors, maybe you're working for someone, or you have a friend who's like, hey, can you make me a painting based on these colors I have in my house or whatnot? It's a good idea to make a little test piece. That way you can mix through the colors and you can kind of decide, hey, I think this is, you know, the right way of going. What do you think? You can share that with them, but then it's also a good reference for you to have later. So obviously for this class, I did some different tests and I saved them so I can have a good idea of what we're going to mix. Now, I don't do exact ratios because even though I've done it before, I do tend to mix by feel and by what I see as I'm going. And that's just my personality, to be quite honest. I know some artists might be much more analytical about it and say, I use, you know, 0.3 teaspoons here and, you know, half a teaspoon here, and then that's how I got this ratio. But I find that for me, and I hope for you too, the joy of mixing comes in responding to the mixes you get as you go. All right. So hopefully you'll see that today as we're going.
Marla, you said what size brush were you using? I'm sorry.
Yes. Yeah, and the brush, and this is a good point to mention, the brush is going to be, I would say, you're going to pick your brush size influenced by how large your surface is. I knew I wanted my Terrazzo chips to be the largest ones, maybe about a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch. So I felt like this size head would be a good starting point. And I definitely wanted to get a flat edge as opposed to this brush here is what we call a filbert. Can you see the difference? How the filbert has there we go, a rounded or an arch head, and the flat is a straight head. Filberts are great for different techniques, but because I wanted very angular shapes, I went with a flat edge because that's going to help us get crispier, more angular geometric shapes.
Right.
Okay. All right.
I think someone's asking too about different surfaces. Yeah, I mean, if
different surfaces. Yeah, I think I saw someone mention they have watercolor paper. Sure, that's totally fine. Of course, the thicker the paper, the better, because acrylics do have some water in it. And if it's thin, it's going to buckle. But if it's 140 pound or more, you should be good. And even if it's 90 pound, it's not that it's not going to stick. It's just you might get some buckling. But yeah, you can use what surface you have. Acrylics are very user friendly. Yeah, sorry.
One of the things that we were talking about the Terrazzo, I mean, we're going to jump right into the color mixing shortly, but we were saying what Marla said, how it originated as a floor covering or a floor surface. Now you're seeing it on pots, plants, potted plants, ceramics, patterns that people are putting into wallpaper. So we thought this would be a good idea to try to do something just to use as a color accent, because it's very abstract and it's really nondescript. And like I said, you can customize any colors, but it's going to be very trendy apparently this fall. I've seen it on some home decorating shows already. So why don't we get into some color mixing? This is a cool palette.
Right. Sounds good. All right, so we'll bring that back for reference. But okay, so the way I kind of approach this, actually, I keep doing this. I'll bring it back. I started with a darker value color first, and I don't necessarily say that this is a hard and fast rule, but I just felt like compositionally, since when you glance your eyes over it, see how if you're looking, the dark shapes kind of pop first, the darker value shapes. So I wanted to make sure I composed those in a pleasing way first. And I also did my largest shapes first, okay? And I did largest shapes, and then I kind of distributed down to smaller. But I just want to let you know, we're going to start with the dark and go to the light value, okay? So to mix the first color, we're going to start with our Phthalo Blue, Phthalocyanine Blue, just abbreviate Phthalo Blue. Phthalo is a very brilliant, vibrant color. Make sure you can see my mixing surface here. And I'm squeezing out, I don't know, less than a half, I'd say a half teaspoon, something like that. You don't need a ton, but I usually mix a little more than you might need, guys, just because I try to do that so I don't have to do much of remixing in process. But then the second color we're going to use to kind of tone it down, and we like vibrancy, but for this, we wanted a little more of a navy, or I wanted a little more of a navy tone. So I've got our Ivory Black. I'll put just a kind of a large pea size amount of the Ivory Black down. And then I'll take my palette knife, and it's always easier to add your darker value color to your lighter value. So even though these are both dark value, the black is still darker than this blue. So I'm going to start by adding just about a third of the amount of that pea-sized amount to my blue, and just start mixing, and then we're going to adjust as we go. So you notice how, let me see if I can move this closer, and I'll just hold it with my hand. Do you see how when I scrape the palette knife on the paper, that brilliance of the blue is more visible? Mass tone is the color right out of the tube. Undertone is the color in a thinner layer. So the undertone is where you can see the subtlety of that color, and you see that it's quite vibrant and brilliant. I want to take it down and make it a little more like navy. So I'm adding more of my Ivory Black. So another just palette knife dab, okay? Because I'm responding as I go here. And that's the other thing too, to say, it's always easier to add more color. I don't want to stub my toe and add too much in the beginning, because then I'd have to just remix if I added too much black, right? So let's keep going. I'm going to add about another good sized dab. I'm just taking down the intensity a bit. You can see Ivory Black is a warmer black. You can talk about color temperature. This is a cool color. This is a warm color. Ivory Black is more of a warm tone. And my blue, I'd say, is more of a cool tone. So when I add those together, it's going to help soften the intensity of that blue. Okay, we're going to go for it. I'm going to add pretty much the rest of the black because I want it a little more like navy. Okay. And we're going to mix it. So it's subtle and it may be hard to see on the screen, but in person as you're doing it, hopefully you can see that some of the greeny tone of your blue has softened. It's gotten closer to navy at this point. I think we're going to go with that. Okay, have you guys mixed that? You're good with that? Now I'm going to wipe off my palette knife. The other thing to know about acrylic color is if you've never used it before, if you're fairly new to it, it darkens as it dries. So even though I'm trying to get close to this color, I have to remember that this is dry. So it's going to look a little darker than my mix. So my mixes tend to be a little bit lighter than the actual dry color would be. Okay. So I think what we'll do, let's go ahead and place some of the, sometimes I mix it first, then place it first. I think let's do some mixing and placing. That makes sense. All right. So we've got our mixed color. I'm going to take my number 2 flat brush, And I'm going to kind of disperse these larger sized chips around the surface. I'm going to think about, I mean, this is one of those things that's really hard to talk about, but you kind of know when your composition is working. But to try and simplify it, do you see how I kind of have a loose circle here of somewhat even spacing? That's my bigger pieces are somewhat like that. And then I have a bigger one here and a couple of large ones here. So we'll just kind of go through that together. And as I place the color, I want to load up my brush. And I am imagining, you know, like a, what should I say? I'm imagining like a piece of granite or marble that has been cracked, right? So you're going to have edges that look very sharp. You're going to have edges that are irregular. I guess, what is it? What do you call it? Not a trapezoid. What's the word?
Oh no, you're testing my math skills.
I know. I didn't. I'm sorry. I totally not.
A trapezoid. I don't know.
Trapezoid. That's it. Yes.
Yeah. Someone made a good reference. They said confetti. That's actually a really good.
Yes, that's
it's
perfect.
Very...
That's way more fun than trapezoid. Thank you.
Yeah, there you go. Let's not make everybody excited about math. Math is fun though.
I admire those who it comes naturally to. I have to work at it. So.
There you go.
We all have our things we got to work at.
We all do, right? The color that Marla was using is Phthalo Blue, and she mixed it with Ivory Black, but I'll put that in the chat.
Yes, yes. So you see how what I'm doing, I'm quickly trying to break up that space in a pleasing, even way with these larger kind of chunky bits or confetti bits of this navy blue, this Ivory Black and Phthalo Blue. So as I'm looking, I'm like, okay, well, let's put another one here. And the other thing too, don't be afraid to, you know, if you have a screenshot or a screen up with this painting, don't hesitate to use, like I'm using this painting to help me think of different shapes, right? I use photos of Terrazzo you might have, anything like that, because sometimes when we're painting, it's just helpful to have a visual so we don't have all of our shapes looking exactly the same, because we want it to look random and, you know, like broken bits, right? But the cool thing is, as we're doing this, each one of us, our pieces are, if you looked at them like fingerprints, they would look similar, but no two would be exactly the same because we're all using different shapes, different ways of dispersing it. And it's going to be unique to your design. So let's put another one down here. And again, I'm placing the larger ones first. Partly because it's going to be a lot easier for me to fill in tiny bits to adjust the composition. If I have to fill in a bunch of larger pieces, that could skew the composition in a way I don't necessarily want it to, right? So as I look at this, I've got about 7 larger pieces. So I have 6 here. So let's make one more large kind of chip up here. And Jeannie and I have talked a lot about this, but in compositions, it's usually nice to have an odd number of similar shapes or pieces. Like think of a flower vase. It's usually a little easier to make a pleasing arrangement by having 3 flowers instead of 2. That's not saying you can't do it, but with 2, but yeah. Go ahead, Jeannie.
It's part of me, Marla. It's so true because we talk about this all the time. It's the theory of 3, and it's the smallest number that your eye could perceive a total composition. So it gives you more symmetry, whereas the odd numbers are a little more disconnected, you know, as your brain processes it. So that's what I've been reading. So we do like the odd numbers. They seem to.
It just helps. Yeah, it just does. So now I've got my 7 larger pieces as I scan, and I'm not getting totally specific with it, but what I did next in this composition is I went to this next smaller size. Okay, so maybe about a 1/4 inch kind of bits. Okay, and what I tended to do too, because when I was looking at different pieces of Terrazzo, sometimes I think when they make it, they're breaking the pieces as they're going. So sometimes it was like a little mini shatter events that happened. So you've got the larger piece and little shatter bits by it. So sometimes I'd think about that. Other times it looked like it was just very evenly mixed. But I think when I was planning out the painting, I just thought, well, I'm going to continue to just kind of use my eye to disperse these bits in a way that will carry my eye through the composition. And it's nice too to sometimes have little bits going off the edge, especially when you're talking about kind of a field of abstract shapes. You know, I don't want to make a border accidentally by having them all contained. I want to have little bits going off the edge. And again, hopefully you can see that that flat edge really helps just by painting it on the surface. I don't have to try too hard. I can adjust the angle of how I put my brush on the surface, depending on where I want that flat edge to be. Do you see how that's working? I can turn it around, but I don't have to try and use a soft round tip to create a geometric edge. So this is a case where having the right tool can be really helpful.
It really looks like as if they're like shards. Like I said, it's made with like the traditional way. It's like concrete and they put the marble wherever, but it's almost like shards of glass. So it's all these, you know, raw edges, you know, so it's nothing that exacting. One of the artists in the class today asked if we're going to do the sides of the painting. This particular one we didn't, but that could be cool.
Yeah, that could totally be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would, just imagine it flowing down the edge and you can, that would be great. Yeah.
And then as far as I'm going to just reiterate, we started with a canvas that was already pre-gessoed. That's why it's white. And it typically says that on the packaging. So for someone that was out there, I will put in the chat as well. But we're just starting with the blue that was mixed with phthalo blue and black, and we're just starting to create the terrazzo design.
That is right. So I'm adding some more medium bits. And again, I'm just kind of somewhat evenly, but not grid-like. I'm trying to not make it look too grid-like, but I am trying to make sure that I don't have all my blue in one section. I want every color to occupy every area of the canvas. So I'm just trying to be conscious of allowing the blue to live in every part of the surface. So now I've got several medium bits. Now I'm going to go to these tinier little shatter bits. And the tinier pieces definitely tended to be a little more clustered together. And this is a case too, or I'll hold it up, maybe you can see it better. I will often turn my flat, I have been using it this way. This is a case where I'll turn it on its edge and just kind of make a little dab and then make it a little more linear as I continue to kind of use the edge of the brush, if that makes sense. And hopefully as you're doing it, you can see the tinier dabs do look a little more organic than the larger ones, just because it's just a little more challenging to get the tiny ones to look really crispy. But we are making a painting, you know, we're not taking broken pieces of glass or plastic here. It's going to have evidence of your hand in it, meaning you as the artist painting it. So that's something I like about it too. So just kind of, I've turned my brush in different ways to see if I can get a different type of edge to it. And I'm trying to consciously move around the canvas. And it's okay. Like if I feel like, that got a little bit big, whatever, that's okay. I'm going to add another little shatter bit here. Maybe another little little shattered bit here. And that's what's so freeing about a piece like this is, you know, it does not have to be perfect, and it doesn't have this really strict game plan that you're following. You're kind of just acting and reacting, like, well, okay, I'm going to place something here. Does that look good? Yes. Okay, great. Oh, no, that didn't look so great. Well, let me put another little bit over here to see if I can balance it. So you're just kind of in the zen of it, acting and reacting just to what you place. And, you know, if you wanted to get really detailed with it, you could do a lot of bits. If you had less time, or if you want a more open feel, you can do less shatter bits. It just depends on how much space breathing room, I guess you want between the shattered bits. You can see it's definitely not a super complicated technique. And then maybe I'll make a little tiny one. And at some point, I'm just literally just kind of taking the corner of my brush and dabbing it down. And when you do that, it almost makes like a little wonky triangle, still geometric. But I liked having some very tiny shatter bits too. And actually, we're going to move on because at the end, if you feel like you don't have enough dispersion of color, then you can just always use some of your leftover color and add more to balance your composition. So I'm wiping off the blue now. I'm going to clean it in my water. And I just wipe it off on a paper towel. And then now we're going to go with the next, the other colors are here are similar in value. This one's lighter, but I'm going to go with the orange next. Okay. So to make this particular orange, we're going to take our Cadmium Orange Hue. And we'll squeeze a bit out. Again, well, it's more like a 1/4 teaspoon. We're going to take some primary yellow. A little less than the orange, maybe like a large pea size amount. And then a bit of white. Probably need even less of the white, but I'll do about a large pea size amount. And then last but not least is some Naphthal Crimson. So it may be surprising, we're using 4 colors to make this particular orange, but that's the cool thing about mixing. I mean, we're using 8 colors to mix 5 different ones. And you might think, well, why don't you just use all the ones out of the tube? You certainly can do that, but these particular colors are very, it's a very specific feel you get from adjusting your tube color to get it to look more like your own mixture, right? And we talked about earlier, this is kind of a mid-century modern palette, just has a very specific feel. So in order to get some of, like, instead of just using our orange right out of the tube, lovely color, but this is a lot more kind of a vibrant, very vibrant orange. We want to make it softer, slightly peachy, and a little less intense. So to do that, we add these other colors to it to change it. So what we'll do is we'll leave this amount here. I'm going to add just a little dab of my primary yellow and mix it in because I want to make it slightly more of a yellow. You know, that red is right. I'm sorry, that Cad Orange Hue is kind of a right down the middle of the road orange. Most of us would see that as a true orange. I want to make it skew slightly more yellow. So I added probably just, I'm adding maybe 2 dabs of the primary yellow. Okay, got a little bit of blue residue on there. I need to try and get off to mix. Now I'm going to add a decent sized dab of my titanium white. And I'm saying dab just because I'm just using the tip of my palette knife to scoop up a little bit of color. And I'm thinking that is still fairly vibrant. We want to soften it. So that's where adding this red comes in. It just kind of brings down the intensity a bit. So we'll start with a dab of that Naphthal Crimson. And hopefully you can see how that really changes the tone or the intensity. Now, after doing that, I'm going to go back and add a little white because that's the hue or that's the color that I want, but I want it a little more pastel. So I just go back to my white and add a little white. So hopefully you're sticking with me. I hope that wasn't too confusing, but that's where I talk about kind of needing to respond to the color as I'm mixing. And as I scrape back to that undertone, can you see how it's more of like a creamy kind of, why is peach Bellini popping in my head, Jeannie? I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, I was thinking, I was like, you totally softened it up so that it's a lot warmer because the other one was really vibrant. Yeah. So yeah, peach Bellini sounds good.
I haven't thought of one of those in a long time. But
neither have I. I don't know. It's
That was good.
very, or how about this, like a creamsicle? How about that?
Creamsicle, that's good.
I'll be GPG here.
That is good. Yes, I did see some sweet kiddos on there. So yeah,
very
creamsicle, delicious. So
looks good.
Yeah, so I think that's pretty good. I know actually since it's gonna darken down, I'm gonna add the rest of my white just to hedge it a little bit. But again, you guys, you're vibing on your own color scheme. But if you're wanting to get it pretty much just like mine, this is how we're doing it. Okay, so it looks very creamsicle-y, dreamsicle-y. All right, so now we'll come back, and the same thing as with the blue, we're going to add some larger bits, and then we'll soften down to the smaller bits. Okay, I'm going to clean my brush one more time, because the only downside about using the darker color first is you really want to make sure that you have all the residue out of your brush. So I'm going to just do it one more time to make sure I don't have a lot of blue hanging out in there. You know, if you had several brushes handy, you can certainly just, you know, hey, that's always nice if you have a lot of brushes that you can switch between. And some painters will do that if they're in a hurry, or maybe they're painting outdoors and they can't sit and clean their brushes a lot. They'll have various brushes hanging by. But anyways, I'm just cleaning mine really well. And now I'm gonna, I think when I did this the first time, I did kind of partner. I put one of these peachy colors near one of the blue, because if I spend a lot of time composing the blue, if I get close to it with this contrasting peach color, then the peach is probably going to lay out pretty well, because I spent a lot of time laying out the blue, if that makes sense. So I'm kind of just relying on some of my other planning here. We'll put like a little peach shard, creamsicle shard here. And I don't know, what are some other things you can think of? Confetti, or maybe geometric state shapes. Like for some reason, I don't know. One of these was reminding me of some kind of state. I don't know. That'd be kind of funny. Geographic terrazzo with the abstracted state shapes. I don't know where that came from, but
yeah. I included the colors, so if someone's just watching. Also, we put that this class is being recorded. It'll be available in 24 to 48 hours. Where you saw the booking for the class under Michael's Classrooms, michaels.com/classes. And we'll also have at the end, you'll be receiving a survey to give us some feedback about what you think about the class, Marla, how she's presenting, the concepts that were discussed, the art, what your experience was. We'd love to hear from you on that. So, and right now we're just over the halfway mark. So we're putting more of the orange shade in, and then we'll do two more color mixes, and actually then you'll have an accent color too, right?
That's right.
Yeah, so we just, as Marla mentioned, it's kind of like we really look at different color trends, and we'll go back and forth on this palette, and then we'll look at trends and colors and creating that balance. That it's a work in progress, and it evolves to what you're going to shortly see at the end.
Yeah, that's very true. Because sometimes, and that's something that I've noticed from working with Jeannie, we'll talk about certain themes, but until I actually get the paint out and do it, and I can imagine certain things, but until I actually get the paint out, sometimes it's hard to know how they're going to play well on the surface. Are they going to play well together? Are those colors not going to play well?
Right.
So that's the other thing too, that it's great when you take classes, because you're getting to kind of lean on some of the R&D that other artists have done. And so you can practice that way, and then you can branch out with your own color choices after that as well. So
very true. Cool. Great point. Yeah.
Yeah, gosh. I mean, yeah, I'll go ahead, Jeannie. Yeah.
Marla has a wealth of experience, and like we were saying, that we've been working together for quite some time, but we've never really actually seen each other because we were in different parts of the country. But nonetheless, you're right. All of these are work in progress, and there's no creation that's not unique, and you just create what where you feel you need to be, and what the purpose of this artwork is. Someone asked about just in general about framing, or if this is just going to be a canvas we're going to hang up, because it's funny, we started out because we do Michael's does sell frames, And they actually have a canvas that has apparently it looks like a frame. It has a wood border around it. But for this one, we're not going to have it framed. In upcoming classes, we will use that. And I encourage you to go check out the Michaels assortment because they have a plethora of different types of canvases and shapes. You know, we chose square, but I know someone earlier on said they had more of a rectangular canvas. They have ovals, they have circles, they have so many other things, which is really making it interesting and unique.
Yeah, that's what's so cool about this too, because you're practicing doing this abstract field of shapes. Yeah, like Jeannie said, you could put it on any shape canvas. You could put it on, we saw some really cool flower pots. I mean, an acrylic can do that for you. You just want to prep the flower pot appropriately with a good primer and coat it with a varnish. But yeah, you can do all sorts of cool things like that. So I kind of went quicker with the orange because, again, I told you I was just partnering wherever I put the blue. I kind of clustered some orange, but then every once in a while I'd put the orange kind of away from the blue to give it some of its own space. And I fairly quickly jumped from the larger pieces to the smaller pieces, right? So tell me if I went too fast there, but it's just the same idea as the blue. I went from the large to the medium and now kind of more the mini shatter. And what I love about it, it's like by adding these little dabs, when you're creating any composition, whether it's representational or whether it's abstract, or you could even say this is more non-objective, right? It's just shapes. You're showing someone how you're training someone on how you want their eye to move through the surface. And you want it to have some spots where it can rest and some parts where there's energy to keep it flowing. So as you're looking at your own work, see how your eye travels through it. Is it getting stuck in one area? Do you need some interest at another part to keep it flowing across? I mean, I'm not always consciously thinking about that as I'm painting, but I will often stop painting and I'll look at the whole, because when you're painting the shape, you're looking just at the shape. But if you can stop and look at the whole composition, then that helps you know where to paint next, if that makes sense.
It does actually. When you're doing that, when you mentioned that flow, I could totally, you're conveying it now because you're balancing more of the orange. So it looks really good.
Good. And what's fun about this too, these are basically complementary colors. Orange and blue are basically complements. So you're already getting like a really charged, punchy piece, but these colors are not the most electric colors you can use, but because of how they play with each other, they're really dancing well on the surface. Okay, so I'm going to bring the original back. Let's go. We're going to go with this beautiful bright turquoise mix, and it's just will be the same process, but I'm going to show you how to mix it. So to take this color called Bright Aqua Green, which on its own, it's one of my favorite favorite colors. In the set of 24, you're going to find several single pigment colors and several mixed. This is one that happens to be a mix of two different pigments. And we do that with acrylics because some colors are just really cool. And we know cool, or they round out the palette in an appropriate way. And so to have them as a color offering is a really nice way for artists because they don't have to always mix this particular color, right? They can just grab their tube and go to town. But what's really nice also is in a piece like this where you want a little more subtle colors, you can take these, like this one has 3 pigments in it. So I want a more muted palette. I'm mixing these 2 colors, which are multiple pigment colors themselves. I don't know if that's just too much, but the idea is we're taking these 2 mixed colors and we're going to mix them further to get a really lovely turquoise from the mix. So I remember in this one, it was almost a 1-to-1 ratio of the bright aqua green and then this color called light blue permanent. Okay, so it's a bright aqua green and light blue permanent. And I pretty much, if I remember correctly, it was like 1 part of each color, so 1-to-1. And so we're just going to mix that together. Oh, I just love that. Love, love, love the turquoisey colors.
That's such a great color.
Oh my gosh, I know.
Color. Yeah. You
just know when the color sings to you, if that's your color, it's just like, oh,
it's one of my colors.
Yes.
Orange, I'm wearing orange today. I love all these colors.
Yeah, But to be fair, sometimes the reason a particular color sings to you is because of what it's sitting next to, right? So if I just had a canvas just with this turquoise, that would be fine. But I also like how it's going to interact with these other colors too. So let's start here. I'll add a bit of a larger shape. And let's put one here. And again, I'm trying to vary my shape a little. If I feel like it's too similar to another one, I'll just add another projection with my flat edge around. You could think kind of a triangle with a broken tip. That's another way I was kind of thinking of it. Like here's a triangle and one of the tips is broken off. So that kind of gives you a nice little shatter piece. And let's do a larger one down here. I want to make sure that we have enough time to see your work. So I'm just going to keep placing my color. Definitely, if you have more questions, feel free to ask. But I really am just kind of placing, them as I did the blue and the orange, larger shapes first, and then I'll move into the smaller bits. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So yeah, this is about 7 of the large shatter pieces. So let's move to some medium bits. And everyone feel like they're getting things done, getting things painted in? Does anyone have terrazzo tiles in their home?
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
I definitely from.
Well, we all will soon.
Yeah, we all will soon. That's right. That's right.
I love it. Yeah, I put everybody's moving along. Couple questions. Yes, you could hang it just with, like I said, one of those command strips or a back, nail or whatever. We are not framing this particular piece of artwork. This tour.
That's what's cool about canvases like this is you don't absolutely have to frame it, but you can also, if you find Michael's, if you have sometimes I've noticed it's harder in any store to find a square frame, but if you can find a frame for an 8x8 piece, great. Otherwise, you can get those. There are different sets that screw together, like the metal sets that you can build on your own to whatever size frame you want. But yeah, for this particular class, you'll end up with a nice piece that you could put on a nail or, like Jeannie said, a command strip, something like that. Now I have to ask, does anyone feel like they've, quote, messed up yet? Because I'm hoping the answer is no, because
I was going to say someone said yes, but
I'm sorry.
There is no mistakes.
There are no mistakes. And you know what?
Very forgiving artwork that we're creating.
Yes, be kind to yourself, because I know it can be easy for us as artists to be hypercritical of our own work, but you know what? You're going to show that to someone else and they're going to think it's beautiful. Because I've just seen that so many times. It's so easy for me to love a piece that someone else has made, and I don't see any of the, quote, imperfections, but I can be so very critical of my own work. So try not to do that to yourself. I find this kind of work really can be freeing, because not that you shouldn't, I try to feel this way even if I'm painting something representational, but I think your inner critic can come out more when it's representational. But when it's free form and more abstract, hopefully you can give that inner critic a break and just let yourself play a little bit more. Okay. All right. So let's move on to the this kind of beautiful, I don't know what the right word, it's not celadon, but like a kind of a lime, what would you say?
Chartreuse, maybe?
Chartreuse, that's the word.
Yeah, because it's got a little bit more of that earthy tone to it.
Yes,
warmer
is the word.
There we go.
So we're going to go back to the primary yellow. We'll squeeze that out about a kind of a less than a quarter tablespoon, large pea size amount. And then we have a dab of phthalo blue. Just to be precise and easy on the recording, I'm going to put a little bit here. But of course, if you wanted just to take a dab of your phthalo that you might have already squeezed out, you can certainly do that. I'm just trying to keep all my color mix here so you can see it. And then a dab of Naphthal Crimson. Again, I have some up here, but I'm just going to put another little dab here so you can see what I'm doing. And these are, I put a tiny amount out because in my notes, I mentioned you just need a tiny dab of these two colors. So we're going to use all of the yellow and the tiniest dab of phthalo. Like, look at how tiny that is. There's hardly any on, oh, let me get it in the light. Hardly any on my knife. Because yellow is such a light value color, you don't need very much of that darker value blue mixing into it, okay? Now, if you feel like I might feel like, you know what, even that tiny dab was a little too much, what we can do, and so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take some of that mixture, put it to the side, and I'm going to add more yellow. So yeah, sometimes it can be really tricky to mix a color like this because it is such a subtle mix of the yellow and the blue. So sorry if I hope you don't feel like I led you astray, but this can sometimes be the nature of mixing. It can be challenging mixing into a lighter value color. All right, so that's better. That's better. So I'd say if you were just for the record, I would say that it should be, oh my gosh, Jeannie, what would you say? Like 20 parts yellow to 1 part of the blue, or even less than that. I mean, just the tiniest dab of the blue is what you need. Teeny tiny dab. Yeah. Okay, so now this green is too limey, right? So what we need to do is make it more earthy, like to use Jeannie's word. So that's where your Naphthal Crimson comes in. And it's just the tiniest amount. And the reason we're using a Naphthal Crimson is because red is the complement for green. So we want to make that vibrant green a little more subtle. So we're just going to dab that in. And look at how quickly that changes to that beautiful goldy green.
Yeah, just warmed up. It's interesting. Marla's referring to a lot of these complementary colors and there's analogous colors, but down the line, we're going to do a whole class on color theory. So that'll be a lot of fun. Because you use it in so many, besides being an artist, if you like to decorate or anything, it's just really convenient to understand those color principles.
Yeah, it is very useful because really so much of color mixing is if you understand your complements, then that is really your biggest tip for getting a whole range of mixes. So yeah, the complement, just to define it briefly, is the colors opposite each other on the color wheel. So yeah, that's a whole color theory is a whole other world, but for our purposes, just know that red and green are complements, and we needed the tiniest bit of that red to warm up that bright green. So once again, I'm going to just put some of my larger chartreuse shatter in here. Now you'll notice this is a more transparent color. So you're going to see a little more of the brush stroking. If you like that, great. If you don't, just know that you can come in later and paint a second coat on top of it if you want to make it a little more opaque. But that is a difference you'll see with this color compared to the others, is it's more transparent because the primary yellow is a naturally transparent color. And do a little bit of shatter here. And I'm picking up my pace a little bit because I want to make sure we have time at the end. But yeah, once you get the idea of doing the bigger shapes first, and then you see how I keep kind of going to where some of the other colors were already sitting, and then I add my green there. It's just naturally creating that randomized yet even composition, if that makes sense. It's not a grid, so it's not even like that, but it definitely has a nice flow to it. Back to that confetti example that someone gave earlier, like it's been tossed in the air and landed randomly, but it's a very fun kind of distribution of color. So now I'm already kind of going to my more medium-sized bits of this chartreuse, this warm earthy green, and kind of placing it. And I think what I'll do too is I'm going to make sure I put I really like the accent of adding, see how here I've got little bits together. I really like how that shapes some of the detailing, is if you put some of the small shatter bits next to the large shatter bits. I don't know why that, but for some reason that tends to really read as terrazzo to me. It doesn't even have to be the same color. Like I'm putting some around this orange and this, but it just kind of helps. Now, what I am also being conscious of is my negative space. And when you're talking about a painting, negative space is just the white or the background, okay? The positive space is where you're painting. And so we're placing more positive space every time we put a stroke down. So that affects the negative space around it. We want the negative space to be as interesting as the positive space, right? So that's why we're kind of thinking about where each next bit needs to go. Like if I wanted it to be more grid-like, my negative space would be just as even and uniform as the positive space, but that's not really what we want. We want that kind of confetti scatter effect. Okay, so we're going to stop there with the green and let's add our final color, the pink. This is an pretty easy one to mix because it's already almost there. And it's the color called Medium Magenta. This is another pre-mixed color. It's already a pink that's mixed by Liquitex. We're going to make it a little bit softer for our purposes. So I'll squeeze out a little large pea size amount there. And then I'm going to add good old titanium white. Might be too much. We'll start with a little less than that. We can always add more. So I put about a similar size amount. I'm going to scooch it over and then we're going to add half of that white first. And if, yeah, that looks a little, yeah, so I do need more. So I'm going to add all that white. Sometimes I can't remember, so I have to go slowly. So this is very bubblegummy pink. And really, I think I want it a little softer. So once again, sorry guys, I have to add a little more white. So what I would say for the record is I would say close to 2 parts white to 1 part of the medium magenta. We'll add 1 more part of white, if that makes sense. And when I say that 1 part to 1 part, 2 part, that literally all that means for to mix this color, you'd take 2 pea-sized amounts of white to 1 pea-sized amount of pink. That's 2 to 1. And forgive me if I'm being basic, but I'm one of those people. And so I just assume in my teaching that other people need to hear it because I would be one of those people that would need to hear that, especially when I'm in art mode. I need the math, just really basic for me to get it together.
It's all good.
So there we go. So that is that softer pink. It's going to darken down a bit when it dries. So I think that'll be exactly what we need. And we'll just place that in. And it's just like that. It will come together before your eyes. So that's kind of like a little modified heart shape. And then, I don't know, some of them, oh, that looks too similar to that. So I'm just gonna kind of like a rectangle with a couple of shark bites out of it. I mean, you have to, it's hard to, oh, there I went a small piece first. Sorry, I didn't do my big pieces first, but just kind of hopefully, you can think of different shapes, maybe like this is a popcorn piece that's geometric. So you're having these different kind of flat edges, almost looks like a piece of popcorn, if that makes sense. Just something to vary up the shapes a bit. And
it's funny because when you're looking at, like I work with a lot of the artists and I'll go by and they'll be painting and I'm like, wow, looks great. It's done. And they're like, nope, not done yet. And just like we did with this pattern, Terrazzo, it looked fantastic at the different stages. But more the merrier. So this really gives you a different perspective and it really emulates what Terrazzo is about. So I think,
yeah, it's funny. Yeah, I could totally believe that. Like for you, it looks, oh, that was great, but they had something different in their mind. So it's like, well, and then they probably could have stopped where you liked it, but then it probably looked great when they kept going too. So
it absolutely did. That's just a difference. I had to train my eye to figure this out. Now it's like, okay, being around all these artists for this long, I think it's guys have rubbed off on me that's in a good way. Looking good. We're going to be wrapping soon. We have like 5 minutes to go. I just want to thank everyone for attending. I know that we spoke quite a bit about the color mixing, which is really the intent of this class. We used a 24 count of the Liquitex Basic set, which is a great value. Marla mentioned some of the colors are primary colors, meaning there's just one pigment in there and others are mixed. So, you know, I encourage you to go out there and just come up with your own palettes. Looking at complementary colors is the best way to do it. And like this, our inspiration was a little bit from mid-century modern. So I hope you enjoyed it. The class will be has been recorded. It'll be available in 24 to 48 hours on the Michaels website, michaels.com/classes. Marla, we're going to have everybody show their art. If we could do that, if we could be so, I think that would be a good idea. But I think Marla wants to show you another.
Let me show you, one more with the colors out of the palette. I had a really good time with this one. This is a larger canvas. This is what? This was 14 by 14 that I got at Michaels. And so you can go as large as you want. And this is a case where I used a larger flat brush. If you go larger scale, get a larger brush to make it easy, but exactly the same process. I just used some of the metallic colors in the set, and then I mixed some of the softer earth tones. Okay. So just, you know, that's how you can do it. You can take any of those colors. You could use them straight out of the tube if you wanted, but it's also fun to mix. All right. So yes, I just wanted to show you that.
Yeah. That looked fantastic and so different. And everybody's so excited. Thank you all for being so kind. And Marla always does a great job. And I know you probably picked up some really good tips, but let's tag Marla.
Yes, please
hashtag Michaels. Michaels Make Art with Michaels. And let's see everybody's art. Great.
I like that pastel version. That's awesome.
Love it.
Do you want me to do gallery view so that we see everyone?
That'd be awesome.
Okay, here we go.
We're going to put you on gallery view so we can see as many people. Look how different. It's great. Have you all expressed yourselves in different ways?
Let me go to gallery here.
Very nice.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Oh, I love the vibrancy.
Looks
oh my gosh, it's like handwriting. That's so cool. Very
cool. Unique. Well done, everyone. I'm glad you had a good time. I'm glad you were able to share with us. And like I said, follow Michaels. And then if you do those hashtags, you may see your artwork on one of the galleries and you could see it in an email that goes to millions of people. So it's a lot of fun. So you could expand your horizons beyond this class. And like I said, please join us again for another class. Check the bookings. We have plenty of other Liquitex classes coming up. Marla is going to be introducing a few more in the next few weeks. So you'll see us again soon. So I want to thank everyone for joining.
Yeah, thank you so
Marla,
much.
You could sign us off.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it. Love to see your work now. Love to see more of it online and have paint on. Oh yeah, paint on you. I totally get it. Keep painting, guys. Have a great rest of your evening and we'll see you again soon. Thanks.
All right. Stay well.
Bye.